right, welcome to Peeps Creek, the cafe where we serve you delightful, slightly intense, but definitely worthwhile conversations. A podcast focused on bringing people together by drinking, listening, and conversing. So grab your favorite drink and let's see what's on today's menu. All right, people, welcome to Peeps Creek, the cafe. This is episode 39, all things trauma.
All things trauma.
All things trauma. Okay, so here at the cafe, we always have a conversation centered around a drink. And today I am drinking, look at this, H2O. Once again, look at that. Boom, boom, boom. Look at all that ice. I am just all into having some water. And I am joined in the cafe by Christian. Christian, you want to say what's up to the people?
Hello, people.
And what are you drinking on, Christian?
I'm also drinking on some H2O
but
with
that
some lemon.
You couldn't
juice.
You couldn't make it go like a little
Is it focusing?
Yeah, but you're supposed to be like boom, boom, boom.
Oh, here you. I mean, it's the same cup.
And where is the ice?
Oh, I don't like you. Your cup is literally all ice, no water. You let it melt.
Yeah, this is what happens when you try to invite people to your arena.
Well, I made that drink, so.
So we are talking all things trauma. So, but before we go there, we have to actually go into the bar. All right, so we are here in the bar. And so you are talking about we're talking about trauma. This was your topic.
I mean,
this is something that you said you wanted to talk about.
Let me go into that a little. So you asked me to come up with something to talk about, and I usually suck at this. I'm like, don't ever ask me for ideas because I'll come up with nothing. And that's the first thing that came out to my head. I'm like, I don't know, trauma. Just because of shit that has been going on recent. Can I curse on here?
Yeah,
I haven't been on here in so long.
Yeah.
I forgot. But yeah, just recent events and stuff that were, I guess, traumatic.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought it would be a good topic because everyone goes through some sort of traumatic thing in their life.
Yeah.
Or has some sort of trauma. So yeah.
So and then before we go on, you want to tell the people why you prefer to hold your microphone, Mr. Oddball out?
Oh, because I got tired of having it in front of my face. So I was like, oh, it'd be cool if I just hold it. I like it better, honestly.
Okay. I don't know. As the creative mind behind this, I don't know how much I really like it.
I do.
Okay.
So get used to it.
Okay. All right. So I guess what we should do before we do anything, I guess, is define trauma, or at least
the proper definition of trauma.
The proper definition. Now, there are different definitions of trauma, I guess.
Yeah, there's different types of trauma.
Yeah, so there's different types of trauma, and I think there's psychological trauma. There is regular trauma.
Physical,
right? Physical trauma. There's emotional trauma.
Yeah, there's mental, that's psychologically, right?
I'm assuming.
Okay. Yeah, there's physical, there's, I don't know what else.
So what type of trauma do you want to discuss?
I would say, I feel like myself, I have endured more mental or psychological trauma in my life. So that's what I don't know about you, because I'm sure you've gone through your own share of traumas, but that's what I've gone through. Physical, I mean, I guess you could say the first time I got my ass whooped. You count, but it's not really a traumatic experience.
As a child, or you talking about
as
physical?
A child? I've never been in a fight. But no, as a child. Because as a kid, I grew up with my grandparents. I never experienced that ever. I was the baby. I was the king of the house.
So your grandparents didn't beat you? Is basically what I hear you say.
It was until I met my mom, which that was one of the traumas that I was going to bring up later.
Meeting your mom or getting your ass beat?
I mean, I guess they both tie in with each other. But I mean, we can, if you want to go over like what trauma means, and then we can go over that later.
Okay, so neither one of us are doctors, of course. So here's what Wikipedia said trauma is. Trauma is an emotional response to a terrible event like an accident, rape, or natural disaster. Immediately after the event, shock and denial are typical. So basically, immediately after the event, experiences or episodes of shock and denial are typical. Longer term reactions include unpredictable emotions, flashbacks, strained relationships, and even physical symptoms like headaches or nausea. Okay. Then there's psychological trauma, and this is basically said to be damage to a person's mind as a result of one or more events that cause overwhelming amounts of stress that exceed the person's ability to cope or integrate the emotions involved, eventually leading to serious long-term negative consequences. All right. So given that you have those two definitions, you have trauma, as I explained by itself. By the way,
By
my
Wikipedia.
my lighting is phenomenal.
Oh my God. Okay, we got it.
It's like Hollywood sunset,
You look like
California.
you're in the jungle.
All right. Yes. Oh, because anyway, moving on.
We're getting out of topic now.
Okay. I was just happy to be looking at that.
I want to speak about my trauma. I'm just kidding. No.
So let's talk a little bit about your trauma.
Wow, this is about to be like a therapy session. I mean, we're also going to speak about your trauma, so.
Bruh, don't worry about me. Like, this is a conversation here. Like this. Now, let me ask you this. At what age do you think you first experienced the concept of trauma, given the definition or even given what you understand trauma to mean?
At the time, I didn't know it was, I guess I knew it was like a big change, but I didn't know how much it was going to traumatize me in the long run. So I'd say at the age of 6 years old, almost 7.
And what was that event?
So I grew up in Bolivia with my grandparents. They raised me since I was 9 months. My mom left me with them to come to the U.S. And I didn't know my mom until I was 6 years old. Within like that year, my mom was able to get me and my siblings our visas and all that. And I remember meeting her. I think it was like January or something of 2006. And within that year, from January to December, like she just packed all her stuff up and like brought us here. Like it was up to the point where like I used to call her aunt. Like I didn't call her mom when I first met her.
So let me make sure I understand. You were living in Bolivia, as I understand, and then you were living with your grandparents.
Yeah.
And at some point, your mother left you in Bolivia with your grandparents.
Yes. So she was in the U.S. for all those 6 years.
So 6 years, from what age to what age were you
with my grandparents?
With your grandparents?
Since I was, she says 6 months, but my grandparents say 9 months. So I don't really know.
Okay.
So I was still like a baby. I didn't know who she was. I had no like memories of her growing up. We would talk on the phone. We would like video chat and stuff, but it was still like not the same. Like I had my physical grandparents there. Like they raised me. And she always took care of us. So I'm not like taking that credit away from her. But yeah, it was within like a few months that like she just like got all her paperwork and we were on a plane. I remember like I did not want to leave. I hid in the closet the day we were leaving because I was like, no, I don't want to like leave my grandparents. Like they're my parents. Like they raised me. Like I don't want to go. And then, but we ended up coming. And then I never realized it until recently that was one of like the big causes of why I rebelled so much growing up.
Rebel like with your parents?
Yeah, with my parents, because I was not the best kid ever. I definitely messed up a lot. I did a lot of things that I shouldn't have, at least with them. So I didn't really know why I acted out so much. until recently. Therapy. But
So when you say recently, as I understand what you're saying, is that you went through some kind of therapeutic process where talking with someone made you realize that part of your issues that you were, I'm assuming, that caused you to want to go to a therapist now stems from something that happened in the past or as you were a child.
I think so. I think there's different things that tie into different scenarios. This was one of my early traumas that tied in with like me growing up and rebelling and doing all the bad shit I used to do to my parents. Let's just put it that way. And yeah, I went through whatever I went through recently, and I went to a certain place, which wasn't my first time, and I don't want to get into that. Um, and I was talking to a therapist, and we were just dissecting everything. Like she went back in time, asked me all these questions, and then she basically like brought that to my attention. I never thought about that before. I was like, oh, it was just a big move. Like, obviously, I didn't want to do it at the time, but now I'm like, I could never live in Bolivia again. Like, I go there, I try to go at least once a year.
Why couldn't you ever live in Bolivia?
Because I'm so like, I hate saying it, but I'm so Americanized. Like, going back to Bolivia, it's like not what you have here. Like, being here, I should be more grateful for what I have and the life I live. And because everything's so much more different in Bolivia. Like, I see how, like, my cousins, they live a good life, or like my family, but it's so different than like what they could be having here if they were here.
So I don't know if you remember when we were in Mexico at the club, and there was this whole debacle where one individual was asking our group like where we're from, and everyone said America, including you, and then you indicated, well, I was born in Chile, but I'm Bolivian, but I'm American. And the guy who was Mexican became, I guess he was offended that you as an individual of Hispanic descent or because I don't want to use the word Hispanic descent, right? That you kind of threw away your image or your heritage or where you're from to try to be Americanized.
I don't think that that's how that went down. I vaguely recall, like, yeah, we were talking, that he asked us where we were, like, from, like, where we lived. And we were, like, in like, Virginia or America.
Yeah, but then he was like, he was like, well, why are you saying you're from America? You're Bolivian. Why can't you just say I'm from Bolivia and I live in America?
Because at the time I thought he was asking like where we were coming from, like where we were visiting from. I didn't realize that he was asking like where we were from.
Yeah, but then when you went back, you during that whole conversation, maybe
I know,
you were drunk.
I don't remember the whole. I don't remember the whole thing.
But the conversation was, and that went into him saying, well. And then you went into the whole story about how you were born and raised and blah blah blah.
I was definitely drunk.
Yeah, but that person was. I'm telling you, because then other folks stepped in. It was basically like you can be wherever the hell you want to be from, right?
Yeah.
If that's your story. But do you sitting here today? Do you see? What's your initial reaction to that? If someone is like, why are you saying you're American? Because you sat here and said you're Americanized, so you don't think you can live in Bolivia again.
That doesn't mean if someone were to ask me, where are you from? I wouldn't be like, oh, I'm from America. I'm from Bolivia. I could say, yeah, I was born in Chile, but I don't call myself Chilean because I'm not Chilean. My family's Bolivian. I grew up in Bolivia. I am Bolivian. You know, all my paperwork is from Bolivia.
Okay.
So, yeah, I was definitely drunk in Mexico.
Okay.
98% of the time.
All right, then can that then. So basically, okay, continue with your trauma story.
But that's one of like the earliest.
But why is that traumatic? Why do you think having the opportunity to sit here today at your age now, looking back when that happened, why was that traumatic for you think?
because I was leaving like at the time, or not at the time, because I still like see it this way. I was leaving my parents behind. The people that raised me, all the people that I knew that I grew up with, like I was leaving them behind, and I was coming somewhere where I didn't know the language. I didn't know the people I was living with. Like I came and lived with my parents and my dad's sisters in the house.
In
At the
America.
time in America, yeah, and I didn't know any of them. I didn't know anyone. Like I didn't even know my little sister until I met her for the first time. Like, you know.
Yeah.
And then,
So your sister was already here.
yeah, my little sister was born here.
Okay.
So that was one reason why my parents decided to stay.
But did your dad and mom come together, or did your mom meet your dad here?
My mom came first, and then my dad came and met her.
Okay.
So their plan was to always go back and live in Bolivia, but then she ended up getting pregnant, and she decided to stay. But that's not part of my trauma.
Okay.
But yeah, and then I remember like once we like got here, I would tell her I want to go back every single day, probably for like a whole like a year or two. Like I hated it. I wanted to go back. I didn't like living with them. And then I didn't get that obviously, so I think that that's why I started rebelling.
So when you say you didn't want to live with them, is it primarily because, again, attached to the fact that your parents, as you understood it, were your grandparents,
Yeah.
who were still in Bolivia while you're now in this foreign country, right?
Yep.
And you were 6?
I was 6, yeah.
And so when did your acts of rebellion actually begin, do you think?
Ooh, probably like elementary school. Yeah, it was elementary school.
And when
I
you
got
use the
here-
word rebellion, what does that mean? Like,
Just
were you hitting them? Like,
bad-
you know,
No,
some of
no,
these
no, it
kids
was
be
never
in the
like-
market is crying and
Hitting
screaming
them.
and kicking and punching their parents.
No, I never threw tantrums in public. I was always like respectful towards my elders and stuff. It was just like bad things. I don't want to say them on camera or like
Bad things as in things that you were doing to them or that you were doing to yourself, but you knew that it was impacting them, which...
a little bit of both.
Like you weren't trying to lock them in a room and then
No,
burn down the house down, were you?
No. I
Okay.
never thought about that. No, yeah, a little bit of both.
So you just gonna you're gonna come on this show talking about trauma, but now you don't really want to give us some kind of meat to this story. Like, how do we know what you're talking about?
Okay, fine. One of the examples was I started taking things without asking.
Stealing,
There you go.
not taking things without
Okay.
asking. See that right there is.
And at the time, it was like, it's right there. Like, if you could take me away from where I'm from, like, why can't I take this?
stuff like what, money
Yeah, I've taken money from my parents before.
and what other kind of things? Food. You go on my
No.
£600 life.
Okay, so I didn't want to say it, but I feel like they did cause me to have like an eating disorder at one point because I saw comfort in food. And that's why I always grew up. I was always the fat kid. That was another traumatic experience. I was always, within my sisters and like my brothers, I was always the fat one. Like I was always the one that was heavier. I was always the one that had heavier cheeks. So that it was because I sought comfort in food. Like when I was eating, I was like happy. I forgot about it. I was happy, and then everything like came back to me after, and I was like, oh, like it's not enough.
Yeah.
And then I started growing up and everything, and then more shit started happening, and it started escalating, like with me rebelling and stuff, and getting into like middle school and high school. I got into other things, and
Like drugs and stuff.
yeah, I started smoking weed.
Okay. You gotta let the world go. Did your parents know, or is this
Yeah.
something you don't want your parents to know?
No, they knew. They know.
Okay.
Yeah, no, they like put me in like ADS, which is alcohol and drug substance classes.
For how long?
it was about 3 months. So I was getting drug tested weekly. And like once they found out that this was in high school, and I want like all of that I feel like stemmed because of that.
Because of your leaving and all of that.
Yeah, I want to. It was kind of like, in a way, in my head, I don't want to say revenge, but it was kind of like me getting back at them, like
Right.
for hurting me the way they did.
So you wanted to inflict pain upon them in some kind of
Yeah.
fashion for the pain that you felt that they did to you.
Yeah,
But do you see how?
but in the long run, I ended up hurting myself as well.
Right. But do you see? Could you, looking back now, did you see how what they were doing was for your betterment?
Yeah, no, now I see, like, that's what I'm saying. Like, I go back to Bolivia and I'm like, that's why I say that I couldn't live anymore and I should be more grateful because I wouldn't have the opportunities that I have now if I was still in Bolivia.
Like, even for me, like, I'm not going to say too much, but right now my son and I are not on the best of terms. And I'm not on the best of terms currently with his mom, for various reasons, because we have differences in opinions on things. And I just feel like I don't necessarily always get the level of respect that I deserve. But putting that aside, without airing too much dirty laundry, as a parent, you're always struggling, I think, with trying to allow your child to get their own footing and understand their own footing, but also struggling with trying to set the path that they need to walk on so that they can maintain that footing. And it's a struggle because you do things like, I know that I probably did too much and less disciplinary action than I normally would, right? Because I'm trying to allow this individual to become his own man, right?
Yeah.
But at the same token, I've experienced things in my life that he never had to be exposed to, at least growing up. You know what I mean? And I wonder sometimes, did I create a monster by
I wouldn't say monster.
well, not
I know what you're
necessarily.
trying to
You know
say,
what I
yeah.
mean? Did I contribute to things that I think are behaviors that I think
You could have avoided.
yes, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's a struggle. It's hard. Like, and I mean, what do you do? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, I'm not a parent, so I can't give you any tips on that, but
no, I ain't ask for your tips, bro. I
Oh,
know you
okay.
can't give me no tips on
Wow.
it, but I'm just saying this is a conversation. We're talking about trauma here. And so, yeah. So, I mean, you know, it's a hard situation. Now, you also said that you've hurt yourself in the process.
Yeah, like smoking weed in the long run, like I smoked weed for a few years. At one point it was very heavily. I also started drinking at an early age, in high school. And it doesn't do any good for your mind, your soul, and everything. Like it in the long run you'll feel different. Like it's not the same. And I can't really explain that very well, but
So, but were you using these things? So, these things that you were using,
at
the
one
drugs,
point it was
the
like
alcohol, did that mask whatever you were dealing with for that moment in time? But what happened when that high wears off or your drunkenness wears off?
I was
What's left?
definitely like in the beginning. It was more of like, oh, I'm doing this because like I'm gonna get back at you, you know, or like I wanted like I know it's gonna hurt you, so let me, you know. But then smoking gave it was like a getaway, like being high or being drunk. I was like happy, and then once all that wore off, I was like thinking about it again, and it was more things were happening. It wasn't just that. Like, in my life, the more things were happening. So depression started to kick in, and that's something I've also been struggling for a few years as well. And I never actually like talked about any of it until recently, and it just opened up my mind a lot. And it's like my parents don't even know this. So if they watch this, like, ooh.
What, the depression or don't know what?
I mean, no, they knew that there was something wrong with me. Like I was always going through ups and downs. Like there's been times where I'm so happy, and there's other times where I couldn't get out of bed, or I didn't want to get out of bed, while I was living with them. But they just kind of like brushed it off. Like they don't. Now my mom is like, you can talk to me, like I've like changed, like I understand kind of. But before it was like they didn't get it. So I couldn't talk to them. But what were we?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I guess it's hard. Being a minority, I think we've said this on a couple of episodes, whether we were talking about some kind of crime or something. But it's hard in the minority community for folks to recognize, understand, appreciate, and navigate through mental health issues because we're not equipped or taught that growing up. We oftentimes, and I know I'm saying we, and I'm putting us all as a monolith, but for purpose of this conversation, I'm just going to assume, for the sake of argument, that most minorities growing up don't have the conversations inside with their immediate families about mental health or about how to deal with depression, or come and talk to me if you feel in a certain way your body isn't, sometimes your mind isn't going where your body's supposed to be, right? And so I just don't think we do a very good job of a very good job of communicating that, because sometimes what happens is that the lack of communication, I think, causes a barrier from the individuals who's dealing with something, and they feel like no one is going to be there to listen. So what's the point? And then when it's time, sometimes what happens is when it's time to have a conversation, right?
Yeah.
Because you feel like, I'm ready to have this conversation with this person, whether it's my brother, my sister, my uncle, whomever it may be. That person tends to feel like, okay, well, maybe this is a little too late. Like, I no longer want to have this conversation with you, type of thing, right? And so, it's a catch-22. It's difficult because you also struggling, I think, as a person looking in, how to say the right things. And like, I know, for instance, with me, I have all good intentions, but the way it's delivered, it isn't.
You can come off as an asshole.
Yeah, it isn't perceived that
Yeah.
way. And we all fall short.
Yeah.
And if we put this in a biblical standpoint, we all fall short from the glory of God. But for the fact that He's there to lift you up and bring you back into the fold, where would we be, right? That's not a biblical verse, but if you take the concept of some of the verses in the Bible, it essentially goes into that perspective. And so I don't know. It is a rocky road. Now, what is your intentions on, or let me ask a question this way. Do you feel more empowered now that you understand, A, that you have trauma, and B, that the trauma has impacted you at some point? Do you feel empowered?
Knowing like where it kind of stems from? Yeah, I wouldn't say empowered, but I feel more in control. And I'm more like, motivated might be the wrong word, but I feel more motivated to like get better and like do better. Like I've been taking so much shit for granted that I've had, and the opportunities, and it's so stupid of me because there's other people that have it worse, and I can seek the help, I can get the help, and it's like there, but I chose not to do it for a long time. I decided to drink or do drugs or find shelter in something else, but yeah, no, it's definitely like opened my mind up to different opportunities and just like get myself together, both physically, mentally, emotionally, and all that. Like, yeah, mental health is a big part. Like, it's a serious topic, and it should probably be a different podcast. But I've been struggling with that a long time. Like, even now, I feel like everyone has, especially during COVID.
But do you feel like mental health and trauma, in your instance, I know you're not a doctor. In your instance,
I think.
do you feel like? Let me ask the question first,
Okay.
bro.
I think I know what you're trying to say, though.
Okay, well, then tell me.
I think that, yes. I think that going through this affected my mental health.
Going through
time.
COVID?
No, going through the trauma that I've been through growing up and shit and stuff. And it's also led to other traumas. And that also affected my mental health. I think it all ties in together, for me at least. But yeah.
Were there moments with dealing with your trauma or mental health where you were just like, fuck it, and like been destructive to yourself and others?
Yeah. I think that there's been moments where I've literally been so careless that I didn't care who I hurt, whether that was myself or others in the process. And that's definitely something that comes back and bites you in the ass, because then you feel even worse. And I'm not the type of person, I hate apologizing. I hate it. Like, if I can avoid it and it's like, okay, I won't do it, just because I hate it. I hate it when people apologize to me. I hate doing it. I even if it's like, I don't know. I'd rather just like talk about it without any apologies, but just understanding each other and going from there. Because I feel like, for me, when I apologize, I just want to cry. I don't know why. I'm such a pussy. No, but I hate it. I hate confrontation too. I can't do it. I'd rather do it through text than in person.
Is that because you can hide from text? Or what?
I think I can express myself better through text. And I'm the type of person that will send you like a whole fucking like book, and you can read it if you choose. If you don't, then that's how I feel. But in person, I don't know how to express myself. I really don't. I could talk in person as if I was texting you, but it just won't come off the same way.
And do you think that's a side effect of your trauma, or that's just you as an individual?
I think that's just me as an individual. I've never been an expressive person. I've never been able to express myself the way I wanted it to come out. So yeah.
And so have you thought about using your trauma and your experience as a shield? In other words, helping other folks, maybe talking to younger people or even folks around your age or friends, that because you can identify certain behaviors that may be a signal or a trigger. Have you thought about doing that, or do you think that's not going to be helpful for you in your journey?
No, I went to a place recently, and I was there for a few days, and I'm just saying it was a mental institute, because I just needed a break. I was spiraling, if you want to call it that. And just being there, like, I met people that have gone through worse, and they're actually like traumatized. They have like PTSD and stuff. And being there was also a traumatic experience, because the nurses don't give a fuck about you. Like,
well, do you think that's the case, or
they're nice and everything, but it's not the way that, like, I've been in a different place before, and it was so much different.
Yeah, but nurses are nurses, and they're not necessarily trained therapists.
Or even like the therapists, though, like I talked to a therapist there once, or my psychiatrist. Like, my therapist, no, it was the same thing. I talked to her once. Once when I got there, we talked for like an hour and a half, and then I was expecting more. I was like, oh my God, we're doing so good. Like,
yeah,
let's meet again.
You wanted more.
And no, it wasn't until the day before I left that I met her again, and it was just to go over discharge instructions.
Do you think that they're spread thin based upon your...
I think so. I'm like, I don't know if they're... Because there's different units at that place. I don't know if it was just they were working in that unit specifically only, or if they were working in the other units as well. So I mean, like I could see that they have a lot on their plate too.
But your perception as a
Yeah.
person there who was there with the intent and purpose of gaining something or learning something
Yeah.
or changing, you felt like it wasn't enough. They didn't give you enough of what you felt was sufficient.
Yeah, no, I mean, I get every place is different, but in another place, like I talk to someone every day, and yeah, we didn't get deep enough because I don't think it was a guy. I personally don't feel comfortable talking to guys. I feel comfortable talking to women.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why, but
I think for therapists, I mean, I think that's just a natural reaction. I mean, like there's the perception that
they have more of like a motherly.
yeah, more intuition, a motherly instincts, and the ability to have empathy and compassion about a situation. Like when I saw a therapist at some time where I thought I was going through a mental breakdown, cracking up, my preference was a female as well, just because I felt that I could be more vulnerable without judgment. And I know that's stupid, and I know that that's me putting presumptions about individuals who are professionally trained to deal with people like me who was seeking help. But at the end of the day, it was a preference, and it was a preference that I felt that was going to be more beneficial to me. But I think that's just kind of, yeah. Interesting enough, though, I had this whole debate. This is a little bit off topic, but since we're on this old women are more motherly or empathetic, I had a huge debate argument at a bar in Los Angeles with a colleague, another lawyer who was female, who happened to be lesbian. But not that really mattered. But I had made that same comment that I felt that women were more nurturing, and I felt like it was something in the natural order of things. And I was just giving an example of, animals. The lion, how the lion or the female is taking care of
The cubs.
The cubs. Now, the only difference I think is when it comes to penguins, I think it's a little different. I think it's the reverse. The father is doing everything. Yeah. But we had a big drag out, knockout fight, not physical, but argument in the middle of a bar. I mean, two lawyers and they're like yelling at each other over this situation. But it's just personal opinion, personal perspective.
And there's nothing wrong. Like there's people that prefer to talk to guys, and it's just your preference. It's who you feel comfortable talking to.
Yeah. So would you, given the two definitions, trauma and psychological trauma, do you feel that you have both, or just one or the other, or you feel like trauma is trauma?
Trauma itself is just trauma. It just depends on what kind of trauma you've been, like how. Mm-hmm. Because there's people that have both psychological, physical. Like there was someone that had PTSD from the war that caused them to, in the long run, become a drug addict, like a meth addict. And I don't think I should be talking about that.
Definitely don't say the names, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, I don't even know them. But no, like there's that's an example. It's like he was both mentally and physically like.
But I thought, isn't trauma the concept of how you react to things that has happened in your past, and so it has like this metaphysical experience to you, like no? Or okay, whatever. Yeah.
I was saying traumatic experiences that I've been through that have caused, I guess, some sort of trauma.
Do you receive or do you experience any kind of metaphysical
explain metaphysical?
Like reactions, bodily reactions. Like you get into a situation or there's a trigger and your body reacts. So for instance, like some folks who are children, some children who are abused, right? If someone yells, I'll give you an example. Patti LaBelle, right? My favorite singer, right? You read her book, her mom and dad, according to the book, I wasn't there, of course. According to the book, they would get into knockout, drag out fights, arguing to the point that every time that they even raised their voice, physically, she would just break out in all of these hives out of that because that situation impacted her. Have you had any of those type of metaphysical responses to things that you identify as trauma in your life or anything like that?
I don't think so. I think I was just so numb growing up that no, I don't think I did.
Do you think everyone has? Do you think everyone experienced trauma, or in other words, trauma comes in different levels, and everyone experiences it in some respect, or do you think it is?
I think some people experience it in different levels for sure, and in different ways.
Yeah.
So enough about me though. Let's talk about you.
I don't have any trauma. I mean, the term trauma doesn't sit or resonate with me. I know that I had moments of depression. I know that I had moments of why am I here? But I'm not sure that they necessarily stemmed from anything that has happened in the past.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I know that my struggle with trying to be a good father, that stems from the lack of.
Do you think that was traumatic for you?
What, growing up without a father?
Yeah. In a way?
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think that every child, particularly every male, wants to be able to have some kind of male figure in their life to show them the ropes, talk to them about things. Now, my oldest brother, father, he
took
me in, but him and my mom didn't live together, so it wasn't like it was consistent. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It wasn't like it was every day, like, I come home, hey dad, type of thing. So I never had that experience. So yeah, I mean, I think that's traumatic, and I think the fact that I didn't appreciate and truly understand my father's side of this family until maybe, I don't know, 6th, 7th grade, right? And then it was my grandmother and my uncle, and both of them had passed away. That really made me feel like I was part of the family. I mean, I'm not saying they're the only ones, but they're the two people who I remember distinctly growing up who brought me in to let me know this is your family. Like, we love you. You're part of the family type of thing. This is my biological. Now I have, my other Auntie Nini and Auntie Pat. Yes, I love them too. I mean, they took me in as well. But my experience that I recall, that I can recall, is my uncle and my Uncle Fidel, who passed away, and my grandma, who made me feel like part of that family. Part of the family. Does that make sense?
Yes. Sorry.
Okay. If you're going to try to hold the microphone, you need to make sure that you're doing it correctly.
I mean, if your thing wasn't so loose.
No, that's okay.
No, I don't know why it came off.
Yeah. So
anyways.
I don't know if I can tie it to any specific event. Does that make sense? And then growing up, I didn't grow up perfect. Now, there are things that, my mom annoyed me on a lot of levels. I'm sure I annoyed her on a lot of levels. Yeah. But it was nothing traumatic that I would say was traumatic.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think my trauma is new, if I had to use the term trauma. But I don't think it's necessarily tied to something in the past. Or maybe I haven't dug deep enough to uncover that.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Anything else?
No.
You wanted to ask me?
No. I mean, there's no trauma that you want to talk about.
I mean,
you kind of talked about like certain things, but
I mean, yeah, that's a conversation for a later date, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, I don't know. It's tough to navigate through those feelings, those emotions.
Yeah.
And trying to pinpoint it to something. And the term trauma, I think, is a turnoff for some people, which I think I'm an example of that. Not a turnoff, but it's a term that I don't want to attach it to something, because it sounds as if it's something that was so dramatic or
you don't want it to like define what you're going through.
Or I feel like my situations or things that have impacted me or things I didn't like or things that I would want to change don't fit in that category. I feel like I would be taken away from individuals who actually truly experienced something.
Yeah.
Like I didn't have like the whole like drinking and drug thing. I mean, I didn't drink till I was 21. First time I tried marijuana was when I first went to college, which was, I don't know, 1920, and I took a puff and hated it. And that was my last time. Now, have I tried it since I've been grown? Yeah, a few times. Edibles. I turned into a whole new different personality.
Oh my God, okay, let's not.
But, you know, I didn't go through that because I've seen family members. I think the trauma would be that I've seen family members who overdrank. I've seen family members who were involved with drugs. And so I would say that that would be my trauma. Okay. That would be my trauma, going through that, seeing that, experiencing that, and always having to run away or attempted to run away or make myself different from that.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anyway, this was a good topic. I mean, we didn't even like try to script it out or discuss what we're going to talk about.
I remember texting you like a little outline.
I mean, that outline. Let me tell you what this outline said. This was no damn outline. All right, people out there listening, here's the outline. Okay, let me put my stuff all the way up in here so they can see this bullshit. Let me see this outline. Okay, here's the text. Intro, : topic, : trauma. What is trauma? ? And other facts about it, like how is it created, how it can affect someone, etc. Our own personal experiences with it, whatever we feel comfortable discussing. One topic can be, what is our earliest memory of a certain traumatic experience we've endured? And then he said, I Googled some stuff like definitions and shit.
Wow, way to throw me under the bus. But yeah, I didn't really know. Like, I said trauma and you went along with it, so I was trying to give you some content, you know? So why not be vulnerable for once? I don't think I've ever talked as much as I have in an episode since I've been on this podcast today.
I think so, and that's because you are the only person in here with me today. So I appreciate you coming in and having a conversation with me. Did you finish your drink?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, you can do a cheers. I still have some. You say you drink it. Did you finish your water?
Yeah. We can do that in a minute. All right. Let's get ready to do that. All right. Here's a cheers. Cheers. Get some good water. All right. So until next time, make sure that you continue to drink, listen, and convert. Out. Peace and love.
Bye.